Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming. We're glad that we can have a good group, and we plan on having these monthly. So get used to coming and having a good meal or snack or however much they want to serve. I'm sure most of you have signed in, but if you have not, and you would like to have information on our programs, please sign and give us your email or phone number. We can either email you or text you the information if you don't have email, okay? We are going to start with demonstrations tonight. Our first food demonstrator, is Marina Rietman, and she's been a nurse for several years, and she's also passionate about mental health, which we're going to be talking about tonight, and she's also one of the associate directors for the Nedley Depression Recovery Program, and we're hoping to have one of those this year. And today she's going to share some recipes that are good for our brains. So I think that's something we all need as we grow and age. We need to have good brains. She's going to be demonstrating oat burgers and walnut maple cookies. And we will be having two others. They're in the kitchen right now, and I guess I'll let you know who they are, but when they come out. So, Marina.
Thank you so much for that introduction. So I chose these recipes because they're all plant-based. They're from this book called Depression: The Way Out by Dr. Neil Nedley, and they're very tasty. Now, why is plant-based good for the brain? I'll just tell you a little story. Back in the 90s, a doctor by the name of Dr. Ornish wanted to do some research on the effects of a plant-based diet on coronary artery disease. And before you do a study involving human subjects, you have to get permission from the IRB to make sure that you're doing everything ethically, you're not harming the subjects or anything. So the IRB said to him, that's fine, we'll let you do your study, but we're a little concerned about your subject's mental health, because this is a really strict diet, and it's going to affect their socialization and their emotions, and so you can do the study, but we want you to monitor their mental health as they go. This was a year-long study, so it was not intended to be a study of the effects of a plant-based diet on mental health, but that ended up being a secondary part of the study. So he gave the control group that ate the standard American diet and the research group, which ate a plant-based diet abundant in fruits, grains, whole grains, vegetables, nuts, beans, seeds in their natural state. So they had to fill out a questionnaire on how they feel day after day and so forth. So at the end of the year, all of the subjects in the control group, their mental health remained roughly the same, and the research group, the ones that ate the plant-based diet, their mental health improved significantly, and their coronary artery disease also improved. So I thought that was a really neat thing. And since then, we've had a lot more studies. So I'm going to start actually today with walnut maple cookies. We'll start with dessert. And there's actually a study that came out last year, talking about the effect of, there's a difference between whole foods plant-based and just vegan. Technically, Oreos are vegan, but they're not necessarily healthy and they're not necessarily good for the brain. Just unrefined sugar does not do our gut any favors. And we now know that there's a strong connection between our gut and our brain health. So if you want a really good healthy microbiome, a good combination of good bacteria in your gut. It's important to avoid those refined sweets as much as you can, even if they are vegan, because actually the study showed last year that those foods can make your mental health worse. So we're going to look at this recipe, which involves walnuts. Walnuts are a really good source of omega-3, which is excellent for the brain. Actually, I don't want to miss any points here because omega-3 is so important. I'm just going to read. They're involved in brain development, function, and aging. Dietary deficiency of omega-3 is associated with higher risk of depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, dementia, ADHD, and autism. You want to try to get it through your diet. It's very abundant in the brain. You want to, what it does for you, improves your sense of well-being, increases your vigor and energy, improved reaction time, improved attention, reduced depression symptoms, enhanced cognitive function, improved abstract thinking. It could improve some aspects of ADHD, lower your risk of dementia. Among the elderly, it could lead to an improved ability to take care of daily activities and improve learning and memory. If you already have a neurodegenerative disorder such as Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease, it can have a beneficial effect. So I didn't want to forget any of those points. It's so important to get enough omega-3. So the walnuts are a good source of it. I'm going to go ahead and pulse this until it's kind of a fine, not too fine, but a little gritty in my food processor. So that looks about right, maybe a little bit more. So I don't know how well you can see this, but it looks like that. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and put it in a bowl.
If any of you have any questions, raise your hand, and she'll be glad to answer while she's doing the demonstration.
Absolutely, feel free. I love questions. Okay, so there's our walnuts. The next ingredient, we're going to do 2/3 cup of whole wheat pastry flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, a 1/3 cup of flaxseed meal, and a 1/3 cup of carob chips. And I've got them all ready. I just kind of threw them all in here. We're going to dump them right in and mix it together. The flaxseed is another excellent source of omega-3 and also something called tryptophan. You heard of protein, right? Amino acids are kind of, you break the protein down into its smaller parts, that would be the amino acids. And tryptophan is an amino acid that is very important for the brain. It's a precursor to serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter that you need to feel good and feel calm. It helps with frustration tolerance. You ever had a day where little things just kind of set you off? Maybe you were a little bit low on serotonin that day. So foods like this should help with that tremendously. Now we're going to add our liquid ingredient, which is maple syrup, a cup and 2 tablespoons of maple syrup, plus 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And I did, and actually I'm glad that you brought that up, because I want to demonstrate for you how I ground up the flaxseed. I'll do that in a moment. Dr. Nedley recommends having 2 tablespoons of flaxseed a day. It's a very good source of omega-3 and tryptophan, and you get your recommended daily allowance that way. It is the ALA omega-3. You've probably heard of ALA, EPA, DHA. DHA is the kind that your brain uses, but your body can convert the ALA to DHA. Something that helps with that conversion actually is not having too many omega-6s in your diet. Anybody heard of omega-6s? Omega-6s are your vegetable oils and seed oils and foods that are fried, like chips and fries and things like that. So if you cut back on those, it can help improve the conversion of that omega-3 from ALA into EPA and then DHA, which is the kind your brain uses. Okay, so I think we've got a good mix here. And then you can just form this into cookies. I don't have my baking sheet with me. It might say oil it. I like to use this parchment paper because you can cut back on your use of oil, omega-6, even more that way. So the parchment paper works pretty well, but if you don't have it, oil works too. So anyway, I'm not going to touch it right now, but you can just take a spoon and kind of make a little mound, and then you can put it onto your cookie sheet and kind of form it a little bit with a fork or with your hands or anything like that. And you only want to bake it for about 10 minutes, probably no more than 15 minutes. They burn very easily, so it's almost like a no-bake cookie. It really doesn't require too much baking at all. And they're really good. You want to let them cool for a bit. They'll be real soft when you first take them out of the oven, but give it just 15 minutes and they'll harden up and they'll be kind of chewy and crunchy, and they have a very pleasant flavor to them. So those are our walnut maple cookies. Any questions on those? No? Okay. And I think someone was going to bring me some boiling water. So as we're waiting for that, I'm going to explain the flaxseed and how to grind that up. So this is a coffee grinder, and it's very easy to use. This is my whole flaxseed. You can get pre-ground flaxseed, but it's even better if you can grind it up fresh for yourself, and it really doesn't take long. I'm pretty busy. I don't grind flaxseed every day. I will usually, I'll fill it up to the maximum line like I'm doing now, and grind it up, and then that lasts my husband and I usually about a week, maybe a little less than a week, I'm not sure, but pop the lid back on. Yes, I do keep it in the refrigerator to help keep it fresh. You could even put it in the freezer. Another question? Oh, we have a hand over here, and yes.
Would repeat those things that you said that this recipe does for people.
Oh, absolutely. So the first thing is the walnuts and the flaxseed, they contain omega-3, which is very important for your brain health. It is involved in brain development, function, and aging, and it could improve your attention, can reduce depression symptoms, just improve your overall cognitive function. If you have Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease, any of those neurodegenerative disorders, it could have a beneficial effect there too on the brain. It could lower your risk of dementia. It could improve your memory if you've already had some cognitive decline potentially. So it does a lot. Highly recommend having omega-3 every single day. And you can also get it if the flaxseed. For some people, it can it promotes very healthy bowel movements, but for some people, maybe too good. So if that bothers you, maybe you want to alternate with chia seed. Chia seed is also a very good source of omega-3 and tryptophan. Tryptophan is the other nutrient that it contains, the flaxseed, not the walnuts. But that is an amino acid that your body converts into serotonin. All right, and I think go ahead.
In this recipe, what serves as the binder?
I would say the maple syrup. All the liquid comes from maple syrup. It's a little on the pricey side, but worth every penny, in my opinion. It's a good natural sugar, not refined. And the flaxseed too. Flaxseed can actually be used as an egg replacer. If you take a tablespoon of flaxseed and mix it with Is it 2 or 3 tablespoons of water? It's either 2 or 3, and you stir it up, it gets real goopy. So that also binds it together, I think, and the maple syrup is real sticky. So they do hold together nicely. Any other questions?
I was just wondering in terms of flaxseed and chia seed, when
Yeah.
you exchange them, what is the balance in terms of how much we should take per day, and how do they ratio out? Like if I don't want flaxseed and I use chia seed, is it the same quantity?
They're about equivalent in terms of their omega-3 content. And 3,000 milligrams a day is recommended. And I think the 2 tablespoons contains more than 3,000 milligrams. So you should get more than enough for your daily intake with the 2 tablespoons. Yes, there's another question over here. And the mic is coming.
I wanted to ask about the amino acid. What did you say about that?
Amino acid is, well, you know what proteins are, right? You think of beans, nuts. It's also found in, chicken, fish, eggs, and those all have protein. So amino acids are this kind of like the building blocks of protein, just like glucose is the building block of carbs, carbohydrates. So there are different kinds of amino acids, and your body needs a lot of them to do different functions. And tryptophan is just one of those amino acids that the body uses to make serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter in your brain that helps promote a good mood. Actually, there's a whole class of medications known as SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and they try to manipulate the space between your neurons to keep the serotonin there longer, so that hopefully you feel a little better, your mood improves a little bit. So yes, tryptophan is very important, and I'll talk about another one in the oatmeal called tyrosine. All right, I've got my hot water, so thank you for that. I'll go ahead and, you know what? I never ground up my flax. Let me do that real quick. This one, you can set it to either coarse or fine and everywhere in between. So I have it set to kind of more on the fine side right now. Okay. So now it's done, and hopefully I don't make a mess right now trying to show you, but can you kind of see that? It's like a not quite as fine as a flour. It's still a little bit coarse, but my husband and I like to put this in our breakfast cereal in the morning, a couple tablespoons, and in smoothies and in recipes like this. So, any other questions before I move on to the oat burgers? Nope, okay. Well then, let me go ahead and switch my recipe. Did everybody get a recipe from the back table? I hope so. Okay. So we need 4 cups of water. We have our water over there. It's already boiled. Usually I'll do this like I'll have my pan and I'll have the water in there and I'll add ingredients. And then when it comes to a boil, that's when I add the oats. So we'll just pretend for now, since I don't have a burner up here with me. So 4 cups of water. Then we're going to add half a cup of Braggs liquid aminos or soy sauce. And you can cut back on it. This is Braggs liquid aminos, kind of like soy sauce. This is vegetable protein from soybeans and water. Those are the only ingredients. Amino acids, we just learned that term, so now you know what those are. Okay, so I have everything measured already in here. So I'll just pour this in and it'll look like a broth. Hope everyone can see that okay. All right. And then next we're going to add some nutritional yeast flakes. And actually, for this recipe, it does call for some oil. I usually omit the oil. I like to cut back on my oil intake as much as I can, and I don't feel like it compromises the flavor at all. So the yeast flakes, flaxseed meal, 1 tablespoon, some dried sweet basil, garlic powder, onion powder, bacon seasoning. I brought it here to show you. Probably Apple Valley has it. I think I got this one online. And this just adds a little bit of smokiness to it. Smoked torula yeast. That's the ingredient. So I've made it without it as well, and it's still delicious. 1 teaspoon of ground coriander and 1 teaspoon of dried sage, and I have all of those measured out in here. The nutritional yeast can be a good source of B vitamins. Usually it's fortified, depending on the brand. And you need B vitamins actually in the process of converting those amino acids to neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine and norepinephrine. Those B vitamins are very important. I have a spoon now, but I like to use a whisk at home because sometimes the bacon seasoning tends to clump. So I like to use a whisk to kind of make sure everything's evenly distributed. One thing I would recommend talking to your doctor about, if you're strictly plant-based, meaning no meat, no cheese, no milk or anything, I would recommend talking to your doctor about a B12 supplement because it can be easy to be deficient in that vitamin, and it is very important. So I've already measured out 4 cups of rolled oats, and I'm just going to dump them right in here. And remember, this is supposed to be boiling hot, so the oatmeal, you'll see, will start to become mushy right away, and you want to let that sit. You could put a lid over it and just let it sit for, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes, just until it's not like boiling hot, so you can handle it and not burn yourself. And it becomes pretty solid, almost like this. And then I recommend for very easy patties, you use a wide mouth mason jar lid and just put it right in there, pack it in, and then it comes out like a beautiful little burger. But it's going to be harder to demonstrate that right now because this definitely needs to sit longer. So that is, I need to tell you more about the oatmeal. Okay, so the oatmeal contains tryptophan, which we just talked about, and tyrosine, which is another amino acid, and that one is important for the formation of norepinephrine, which is another neurotransmitter involved in memory and focus. So eat your oats. They contain both of those amino acids and are very good for you. I like to get the organic sprouted. If you're sensitive to gluten, you can get gluten-free oats. I mean, they're naturally gluten-free technically, but usually they're processed in a facility that might also process gluten. So if you're sensitive to that, you can look for gluten-free oats. You can even get sprouted oats. Actually, some of the burgers are made from sprouted oats. They're a little bit tougher. You might need to let them sit in the hot water a little bit longer. But overall, the end product is the same. So that is the oats. I feel like there was something. Okay, before we go on to our next presenter, I wanted to just mention some of the fixings on the burgers too. We're going to have tomato, spinach, onion, and Erin is going to make a lovely plant-based mayo that has no oil, so no omega-6s in there, and is very easy to make. The spinach, actually most vegetables are going to be abundant in something called folate. It kind of sounds like the word foliage, greens. So you need folate also, to make all the neurotransmitters that you need. It's very important for the health of your central nervous system. In fact, it's so important that our government decided that we need to start fortifying our wheat products with folate because people don't eat enough vegetables. So let's fortify the grains at least because People eat pasta and bread more often than green vegetables. But did you know that if you don't have enough folate, if you're deficient in that, and you're on an antidepressant like an SSRI, it may not be as effective because of the folate deficiency. So the great struggle of my life is to get my patients to eat more vegetables. So definitely try to get that folate in there too. And let's see how I'm doing on time. I think probably I need to let the next presenter go. Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely.
I just want to know if there are any products that are fortified with B12. Do they put B12 in nutritional yeast?
Yes, the B12 it's not naturally rich in B12, it's fortified, and it depends on the brand, so not every brand, you can look on the label. There's also a lot of the plant milks and cereals are fortified with B12, but you might want to consider just to cover yourself and make sure you're getting your recommended daily allowance to take a supplement, but check with your doctor first. The timing of your foods is very important too. I should mention the intermittent fasting. If you go a long period of time without eating, say like after dinner, your brain is going to produce more brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, and that is also involved in learning and memory and with your reaction time. So that has also been shown, if you're deficient in that, associated with more risk of neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and things like that. So intermittent fasting is excellent for the brain. You get more of that BDNF, and eating a good breakfast is very important for the brain too. If you want to do better in school, studies have shown that better academic performance is associated with eating breakfast. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Any other questions? Yes. What ingredients are in the bacon seasoning? Okay, so the only ingredient in here is smoked torula yeast. So I don't know if that's similar to nutritional yeast. This doesn't look like this has any added vitamins to it, and it doesn't really have any calories or sugars or anything. It just adds a little bit of that smoky flavor to it. Does anyone else know? Do they know a little bit more about torula yeast specifically? If you don't want to use it, you don't have to. I've made these burgers before without it, and they taste really good too, so it's up to you. You can modify it. Any other questions? No? Okay.
So our next presenters, I'm going to introduce both of them at once. So Aaron Saroun, did I say that right, Aaron? Saroun?
Saraun.
Anyhow, she's going to show us how to make the healthy mayo. And after she's done, Sonia Morales is going to show us how to do a quinoa salad. So exciting about that. I just want to mention too that flaxseed, if you have high blood pressure, flaxseed is, they found out in another study that flaxseed is very good for reducing your blood pressure.
Thank you for sharing that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna demonstrate a really simple mayonnaise. I'm a mom with a toddler, so I need something quick and something tasty. So I like to use this mayonnaise a lot, and it's from the cookbook 7 Secrets. And so first, it's 1.5 cups of rice, and I used brown jasmine rice. Yes, cooked. Thank you. And you want it hot as well, so it blends better. Rice, I know there's been a lot of talk about arsenic levels in rice. I don't know if you guys have heard that, but I did some research, and if you soak your rice and then rinse it, you will reduce the arsenic levels. Brown rice actually has more, but it all depends on where it's grown. So U.S. grown rice, especially Texas, is the worst for you, but rice grown in Pakistan or India or California is actually better. So you want to stick with more like basmati or jasmine. Those are the best rices. So we have 1.5 cups of rice, a can of coconut milk, I have 2 teaspoons of salt, teaspoon of onion powder. There's 1/4 cup of lemon juice. This is measured out already. And then you're gonna have 1.5 tablespoons of honey. If you wanna reduce the salt, the amount of salt in there, you also wanna reduce the sweetener and the lemon juice because those are kind of balanced for the most mayo type taste. Half a tablespoon. I wouldn't keep it more than 10 days. It makes about 3 cups. It's about half a jar of your regular larger mayonnaise. Yeah, you could cut the recipe in half. Okay, and then we're just gonna whiz that up. It helps to and you're going for like a nice smooth texture. You don't want any clumps in there, although sometimes when I'm in a hurry, I don't mind a few little pieces. But then when you set this in the refrigerator, it will like thicken up. If you can see, it's a little runny right now, but as soon as it's put in the fridge and it cools, you'll have a nice mayonnaise consistency. So I think Sonia is up next. Yes. Question? Was there a question? Oh, sorry. I just use this one is just unsweetened coconut milk. I wouldn't go with the light one. You would want more of the fuller fat so it thickens more in the fridge. Yeah, I used the whole thing. So no need to stick it in the fridge or anything like that. Just dump it right in. Any other questions? Okay.
Are you excited to be here? You know what I was thinking? This saves you from getting a cookbook out and you start making the recipe. You got it all everything all fixed, like, not really my favorite. And then by how to eat it now because you don't want to waste the ingredients, right? So, and this way you're able to try. You can say, well, this is really a good recipe. That's one of the I'm gonna be making it for myself. So the quinoa salad. I mean, you can do so much for quinoa. This is a basic recipe, I would say, because it's one of the ingredients that I like. But definitely you can go so much with this, making your own. I'm not big in raw onions, so this one does not have onions, but you can have onions, you can do celery, you can do chop watercress. I mean, there's so much you can do with it. And what I like it is because I also work long hours, and I like to, if I make it on Sunday, I have a few days I can eat, and it's like a whole dish itself. Quinoa is a grain that has probably one of the highest that has protein already in it. And then you add some beans, which I love beans. You can use whatever beans you have. Of course, I do cook my own beans too, but easy if you have a can of beans around. The one you have in your recipe has black beans. This one are red beans. So, whatever you feel like it, like it says, welcome to change it. You may not like some of the ingredients that you're given now, but you can also, like I said, you can put your own. You cook quinoa. I made it to the smallest amount because I know some of you are just yourselves, and it's easy to make a small amount instead of come up with a huge amount. You can eat it for 2 weeks, right? So, this is just 1 cup of quinoa, which it will make it right here. You can see probably like 4, I would say, or maybe 3. And it's a good amount already. And then you add up all those vegetables, so you really end up with a good amount. And I don't feel guilty really eating with this because it's really good ingredients all the way around. So once your quinoa is cooked, you cool it down. I usually, if I'm home, if winter time, I just take my pot outside, let it cool. Or if you can put it in a little pad under, put them in your fridge. If it is summertime, let it cool down if you need it right away. But you can also cook it the night before and you make your salad the next day. So it's as simple as just when this is cool, you add all your ingredients. This one we have the cucumbers, we have the beans, also the quinoa, one of the things that's famous for that too. It contains complete proteins, because it contains all the amino acids. The amino acids requires carbohydrates, to bind and then becomes a complete, and this protein has them all. So all the 9 essential amino acids quinoa has, so it's a really good deal. 1 tomato. Everything has already been cut and measured. I have olive oil. I do like olive oil. I know some, don't like a lot of olive oil, but for some reason I don't feel guilty eating some olive oil myself. This one has a large lime. I prefer limes than lemons, but you can do lemons. And it has 1/3 of olive oil and salt to taste. So it's just a thing of put it all together and mix. You'll be ready to just get your bowl and sit down and enjoy it. So that's the fun thing of this quinoa salad. And I'm sure once you make it your own, you can put your own veggies that you loved and you enjoy the quinoa salad. Like I said, this is a 1 dish deal. Really good for summertime. It just tastes very fresh, especially when it has the cucumbers. I think gives it crunchy and fresh taste. So it's really good. Not much to add. Just if you have any questions.
I just wanted to add something. I'm so glad you brought up the carbs because carbs are required to get tryptophan and tyrosine into the brain, which could be a reason why people who eat plant-based, it could be an explanation for why you see lower rates of depression because it tends to be high in healthy carbs and you need also, if you get your tyrosine from something like, or tryptophan from something like turkey, it has a lot of other amino acids in there that compete with tryptophan for getting into the brain. So it's actually more ideal to get it from plant sources. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
So if you see almost your little pot is about full, that will give you a few meals for one person, so you can just go ahead and don't have to worry about cooking for the next few days.
I just want to know, did you mix the olive oil with the
Lemon.
juice of a lime?
Lime.
Oh, you mix it up together?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you don't have to. You know what I do? I have the lime squisher. I put olive oil. I really cooked myself. I'm not really much in measurements. I am the one that's like that. And I don't have this. I'm gonna replace it for this. I feel like a cookbook to me is like an idea, maybe. Give you ideas what to cook. I don't quite follow recipes, because I feel like I want to eat that today. I may not have one or two ingredients. I'm thinking, how can I replace that? I think this would do, So since I'm not really picky, once I know, especially that it's a healthy thing and it's good for me, I don't mind to eat it. So if you're, someone like that, you can replace it. You don't have to be specific. You can, like this is really good to add cilantro. I grew up with a lot of cilantro in my life, and I love cilantro. You can do it, in so many ways. It just gives it this fresh taste. That's to me anyway. So you can add cilantro. I know watercress is really good for you too. You can just, I like to soak all those vegetables like in vinegar water. Let it sit there for a few minutes. Rinse them and chop them very fine. Add it to this. A lot of greens is great. Now with the summertime, the vegetables, come in, maybe more fresh basil or mint. All that goes really good in that kind of salad. So, any other questions? Are we good? Thank you so much. I'm excited all of you came, and you'll be tasting all the food really soon. That's actually thing already coming around. Enjoy it.
So while you are enjoying what they have fixed for you, we have Keona Pates with us. I'm going to read this because it's quite impressive. She's a licensed clinical social worker and a certified clinical trauma professional from Jamaica with a master's degree in social work from Andrews. And she's the director of adult clinical services at Oak Lawn Psychiatric Center in South Bend. She has over 8 years of experience working with adult mental health and addiction population as an agent of support and guidance. And additionally, she's a couples counseling therapist in private practice. Her professional life includes a commitment to serving the needs of our community and is especially sensitive to the needs of adults with serious mental illness, trauma, and addiction. So you can see she has a lot of experience, and she is going to be talking about mental health. Okay? Doesn't the pastor have the blessing for us?
Oh, Charlie can.
You want to have a blessing?
Sure.
I don't know if this is on. Michael?
We're going to begin with a word of prayer. Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, thank you for the spiritual food, the great information, and thank you for the physical food that is tasty in our mouths and nourishing to our bodies. In Jesus' name, amen.
we're just going to use this microphone for now. And I'm actually glad I get to talk to you while you're eating, so you're not grumpy, because when you're hungry, you're hangry. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about mental health and well-being. Our objective for tonight is to discuss briefly what is mental health, how mental health contributes to our well-being, ways we can build good mental health and resilience, and then I have just a slide with resources, which is also printed at the and on the table at the back of the room. Just one moment. Okay, so I was gonna ask you to give me your definition of mental health, but I won't because you're eating, and I don't wanna be the waitress that come and ask how is the food while you take a bite. So, mental health is our emotional, psychological, spiritual, and social well-being. It affects how we think, how we feel, and how we act. And it's not just the absence of a mental illness. A lot of times people think, oh, I've never been diagnosed with any mental illness. I don't have depression, I don't have anxiety, I don't have borderline or bipolar, so my mental health is good. That's not always the case. Our brain is pretty amazing. Our mental health is determined by how our brain functions. We don't often think about how our brain controls all our actions and our minds and our body, but understanding this makes all the difference in how we prioritize our mental health. So, to discuss mental health, we need a basic understanding of how the brain works. Our brains are composed of billions of tiny cells that we call neurons. And Marina touched on so much of my presentation, I wonder if she was looking at my PowerPoint. So these neurons are connected via electrochemical impulses, and through these connections, our brain directs all the actions of our bodies and our minds. So things that we're aware of, like moving or talking and laughing, eating, and then things that run in the background, so breathing and digestion and temperature control. Even our thoughts and our emotions are a result of neural connections. Our brain does its work in two ways. First, it creates a neural pathway for the things that we do most often. You can think of these things as habits, because neurons that fires together tends to wire together. Have you ever gotten to church and realized that you don't remember how the drive or to work and don't remember how you got there, like the drive to work? That's because you have created a strong neural pathway for driving to church or driving to work because you do it so often. And then secondly, our brain also releases neurotransmitters each time a neuron fires. Neurotransmitters are the chemical messengers of our brain. And so if you think about when you hold a baby and that feeling that you get when you hold a baby, what's actually happening is your brain is releasing some of those feel-good chemicals that promotes connection and bonding. And it's the same is true if you're worried about, let's say, a job performance at work and you're constantly thinking about that, your brain is going to produce some stress chemicals to prepare you for danger. It's almost like it's telling you need to get ready to run up from a saber-toothed tiger. When we think about mental health, we want to think about mental health being on a continuum. So first, we have changes in our mood, in our thinking, and which result in changes in our behaviors. Then we have these result in changes in or making daily activities really difficult for us. Hence, we have impairments in our work, in our interactions with friends and family, and just fulfilling major life functions. For many of us, we can decide to increase our self-care or change our diet, change our lifestyle, or even visit our primary care doctor and they prescribe some antidepressants and we're doing better again. What I want you to remember that as these symptoms, or as you move across the continuum or your symptoms increase, you will need more excessive care. You need to seek excessive care. So the problem with seeking care is that there's stigma around mental health. And a lot of people suffer because of the stigma associated with mental health. We often, a lot of times, we've come a long way when it comes to mental health, but we still have a further way to go. Oftentimes people who struggle with mental illness, especially severe mental or serious mental illness, they're seen as lazy, sinful, criminal, or dangerous. And we know this is not always the case, primarily because you're diagnosed with a mental health condition. So the problem with stigma, people are slow to seek treatment. I don't want to get any mental health treatment because I don't want people to label me. Or so they sit and they suffer in silence, and silence is lonely and debilitating. And when you sit and not get treatment, the illness worsens. And people experience unnecessary suffering when treatment really works. Mental health issues are more common than we think. These are statistics from National Alliance on Mental Illness and Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, NAMI and SAMHSA. And it says here that 1 in 5 Americans experience mental health issues each year. 19% of those diagnosed with anxiety, 8% for depression, and then another 8% for substance use. And the lifetime prevalence is 50%. So it is very common. We just don't talk about it because of the shame associated with mental health, or sometimes it's just a lack of information. We just don't know. And so we don't really talk about it. We know that the pandemic made everything worse. It really did. And for a lot of people struggling with mental health, it disrupted the services. But it also did draw attention to mental health and encourage a lot more people to seek treatment, seek services. Women and youth were mostly impacted by the pandemic. So during the pandemic, we had depression and anxiety increase by 25%. Overdose deaths increased by 28%. This does not take into consideration those who survive overdose. And when you think it, and then excessive drinking increased by 21%, a lot of people lost family members and friends. They lost their jobs during the pandemic. A lot of people were home alone, isolated. And so you can see how mental health issues and illnesses increased during the pandemic. And this statistic is from the World Health Organization. So we're going to look at a very common mental health diagnosis that we're all familiar with. We're going to use depression as an example. And I want you to start thinking about what depression looks like for you. Again, I won't ask you to tell me because you're chewing. But think about what you imagine depression to look like. And so we're looking at different faces on the screen, and you'd probably look at one or two to say, yes, those individuals look depressed, and that one does not look depressed. The truth is we can't really tell if someone is struggling with depression just by looking at them. So we have to do a little bit more digging and investigation and observing some of their behaviors to determine if they're struggling or not, or ask, how are you doing? And really mean it. A lot of times we ask, how are you? And we ask in passing. So we didn't even stop to hear the answer. Really asking people, how are you doing? And stop to listen to hear what they have to say. So on the screen, you're looking at a brain scan of a brain with depression and a brain diagnosed depression and a brain that is not diagnosed with depression. So the orangish yellow that you're seeing here is it typically indicates brain activity. And people with depression lack the neurotransmitter serotonin that Marina talked about earlier, which is needed for neurons to fire. A neural activity during a depressed episode is suppressed. So if you look at the brain without depression diagnosis, you see a lot of activity going on, a lot of yellow and orange in the brain. And then the depressed brain rarely have any activity going on. So serotonin is suppressed during that time, so we don't have a lot of neurons firing. You can see how this might result in someone feeling less happy or low energy or just difficulty getting out of bed, isolating themselves, or just feeling like they don't care anymore. And then if you translate that into everyday life, think about your interaction with someone who's having this experience. How are they going to interact with you? How can they be productive when their brain is literally sick? So, the bottom line is mental illness is a brain disease in its mildest or most severe or serious forms. So, mental illness and physical illness should be viewed in similar fashion. You can have a mild case of COVID, or you can have a most severe case that requires hospitalization. And it's the same thing with mental illness. We wouldn't make fun of someone who's diagnosed with cancer or diabetes. So we wouldn't want to make fun of someone who's struggling with mental illness. We wouldn't make a comedic movie out of someone who's diagnosed with, from the story of someone who's diagnosed with mental illness and with cancer. And so we wouldn't want to do the same thing for people who are struggling with mental illness. There's no single cause for mental health diagnosis, but we know that there are some contributing factors. And so when we think about early adversities, and hopefully I'm supposed to do another presentation and I'm gonna focus a little bit on trauma, but we talk about early adversities like abuse and neglect, witnessing violence, DV in the home, a family member going to prison or jail, some biological factors, environmental factors, the use of alcohol and drugs, and then some spiritual factors. All of these things cause changes in the brain. And most mental health illness have a genetic component, meaning that they can be passed down. However, whether or not someone is or winds up with a mental health illness, it just depends on that very complicated relationship between genetics and their life experiences. So if you think about someone who has diabetes in their family, your mom or your dad was diagnosed with diabetes, and if they eat a high sugar or high carb diet, they're likely probably going to end up with diabetes. And it's the same thing with mental health. If you have a close relative who struggles with depression or anxiety, and you have some of these life experiences, then you're probably likely going to struggle with depression at some point in your life. So, what does it look like? Some of the symptoms that you will see on a daily basis. Sometimes there's some tension between friends and family with the individual involved. There's sadness, fatigue, poor physical health. Studies show that people who struggle with mental health illness often just doesn't take care of their health. They don't have the motivation, they don't have the energy to do it. So they often struggle with physical health complications as well. So there's strain on the marriage and different relationships, decreased productivity, irritability, social withdrawal, misuse of substances. A lot of times you can't tell which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Is it because of the substance use that results in a mental health condition, or it's because of the mental health condition that drive people to use substances? If you think about a serious mental illness like schizophrenia, a lot of times they're hearing voices and they can't determine what's real and what's fake. And to suppress that, they'll go to alcohol or they'll use illicit substances to kind of drown out some of those voices that they keep hearing. So, if you're worried about someone in your family, church family, and you want to talk to them about what's going on because you're concerned, you might wonder how you might do this. First, we want to say, show support and empathy, and offer to help, and really mean it, and let them know that you mean it. Assume that they're struggling, because a lot of times we see people and feel like, yeah, they're fine, they'll be okay. assume that they're struggling. And if you know someone that you really love and care about and they're struggling, you're not going to just let them struggle on their own. You're going to try to offer some help. Do not assume that they're deliberate, lazy, or irresponsible, or that whatever experiences they're having with their mental illness is self-induced. And remember that people can't just snap out of it. If it was that easy, we wouldn't have as much people suffering as we do now. So I hear family members say, oh, he's just lazy, he just doesn't want to work, he just need to get up and go to work. Nobody wants to suffer. And so if it was that easy for people to just snap out of whatever they're experiencing, we wouldn't have people struggling the way they are. Now, how do we cultivate good mental health and build resilience? So just a reminder, mental health is or emotional, psychological, spiritual, and social well-being. It affects how we think, how we feel, and how we act. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from adversity, to be able to adapt to changes. To explore resilience, we're going to borrow some concepts from neuroscience and from positive psychology. First, I want to say your brain is an organ. Just like your heart, just like your lung, your brain is also an organ. And we talk a lot about heart health, but we don't talk so much about brain health, even though we know that our brain is an organ. Our brain thrives under optimum conditions and contributes significantly to our mental health, so we want to take care of our brain. Also remember that your brain is plastic. It's very flexible. It's a flexible organ, and it has the ability to change. You change your brain all the time with everything you do, even by thinking. In fact, if you learned something new today, you would have connected 2 neurons that were never connected before, and that's a change in the brain. So we're going to get specific on what you could do. First of all, we talk about exercise. Oxygen is your brain's favorite food. And when you exercise, you increase blood flow to your brain, which brings a lot of oxygen. And research shows that when we think and feel better when we move. So the next time you're feeling down or discouraged or feeling a little bit depressed, take a brisk walk or go for a run or work out if you have your in-home gym. And I'm sure it's going to improve your mood. And this slide, I don't even need to talk about it because Marina just touched on all of that, and I really appreciated her for doing that. But healthy eating. So to boost your mental health, focus on eating plenty of fruits and vegetables, along with food rich in omega-3 fatty acid. So dark green leafy vegetables in particular are really good brain food. The nuts and seeds, legumes, beans, lentil are all excellent brain food. And a lot of us here have a plant-based diet, or majority plant-based diet, so you're already on the right track. Sleep well, so you can think well. Did you know that your brain literally take out the trash at night? You actually have a waste management system in your brain, the glymphatic system. And we know that modern life has interfered with our sleep hygiene. So, to improve your mental health, there's some simple things that you can do. Establish a nighttime routine. So if it's going to bed at night every night, start doing that and try to stick closely to that time as possible. Stop using your electronic device at least an hour. Increase the time as you go along. So an hour, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, at least an hour before bedtime. And if you consume caffeine, which I hope we don't, but if we do, try not to drink any caffeinated beverages after 2 p.m. In the day. And don't sleep with your TV or your lights on. Make the room dark. This one is very simple, and I know we often miss this because we have a very busy life and we hardly ever have time to connect. But we're social creatures, we're social beings. God created us social beings. So connect with people in your circle, connect with family, connect with church family and friends and co-workers. In fact, when we connect with others, we get a host of feel-good brain chemicals like oxytocin and dopamine. So the next time you're feeling down, reach out to someone. And it's so easy now to do that. We can just pick up our phone and call someone and talk to them. We're not living in the age where we'd have to write a letter or walk over to your neighbor, which would be nice for a face-to-face interaction. But if you're not able to do that, pick up your phone and talk to somebody. Next, we're gonna talk about managing stress, and this slide is just there with nothing on it because I was planning on asking you questions, but again, I won't interrupt your meal. So, stress brains don't function the same way, and we know that. When you're stressed, you release a lot of cortisol, and that cortisol floods your prefrontal cortex. And so your rational, your executive function part of the brain goes offline. And just your amygdala, your flight, freeze, your emotional brain kicks in. And what's happening when you're stressed, especially when you're experiencing chronic stress, your brain is saying, all the non-essentials we're going to put on pause. So sleeping, we're not going to deal with that right now. Digestion, we're going to put that on pause. Right now, we need to protect the body. And that's what's happening when you're experiencing excessive stress. Stress is good, though. It gets a bad rap. A lot of times we say avoid stress. But in this sinful world that we're living, think if you didn't have anxiety for some things, you'd probably just step out in the street without worried about something hitting you, or speed down the highway without worried about having an accident, or don't even study for an exam if you have an exam coming up. So some amount of stress, anxiety is helpful for functioning. It's not God's ideal, but it's helpful. So some ways that we can manage stress: exercise, play, and I intentionally put that on there because I know when we grow up, we stop playing. Playing is good for the brain. Gardening is good, praying, Bible study, mindfulness exercise, having your different hobbies. Talk to a trusted friend or family, somebody you know that you can rely on, somebody that can support you and help you through it. And slow down. I talked earlier about how busy life gets, and there's so much demand on us as we transition through life. But if we make everything a priority, nothing will be a priority. So slow down and spend time in nature. Go outside for a walk, even when it's cold. Bundle up. Go get some sunshine. Go outside for a walk and listen to good gospel Christian music that's edifying. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about positive psychology. We're going to highlight 4 things that are backed by research that we can use to improve our mental health: optimism, altruism, empathy, and gratitude. Cultivating optimism. Is a glass half full or half empty? We hear that question all the time. We all worry, right? But most times we worry about things that don't really happen. And Cornell University actually did a research on this and found that 85% of the things that we worry about never actually happen. And so the glass is indeed half full. We just sometimes have a hard time seeing it that way, especially when we're in whatever situation that we're in that seems gloomy. Now, is it possible to train your brain to be optimistic? Absolutely. Whenever we think positive thoughts, we strengthen the neural pathways for positivity and release feel-good brain chemicals like, again, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin. So some things that you can do to train your brain to be more optimistic is notice good things when it happens. Don't just glance at it and move on, but really pause and process it. Spend time with optimistic people. Don't spend time around the Debbie Downers. Focus your time and your energy on people who are optimistic and positive. And then acknowledge the things that you can change and the things that you cannot. Recognize what's in your control and what's not in your control. And be intentional about replacing some of those negative thoughts to positive thoughts. Consciously think positive thoughts, reframing, practicing reframing, changing the negative thoughts into positive thoughts. And all of us have a cell phone. Almost all of us have a cell phone. And we walk around with a bunch of happy memories on our phone. So if you're feeling down, Pull out your phone, scroll through your pictures, look at some of the good memories, some of the happy memories you have. I'm almost certain you're going to start feeling better when you go down memory lane, when you have some positive memories in there. Empathy. When we try to see things as others do, we cultivate more positive affiliated feelings and less divisiveness. We hear the story about the 3 little pigs. Have we ever considered the story from the wolf's perspective? That's empathy, right? So there's a guy on YouTube, his name is Alex Wolf. He actually told the story from the wolf's perspective. And the wolf was like, all I needed was a cup of sugar. But I had a cold, and I sneezed, and the rest is history. So consider the story from the wolf's perspective. And then gratitude. It's good for you. It actually changes your brain. And research shows that people who regularly express gratitude have more activity in their prefrontal cortex and less activity in the impulse part of the brain. So you're able to think better, be less impulsive, and have better rational thoughts. So ways to express gratitude. Write a thank you note or text. Keep a gratitude journal. Start or end your day noting 3 things you are thankful for. Make a gratitude jar. The other one was a gratitude journal. And say thanks often. We don't do that a lot, but say thank you to show your gratitude. Practice gratitude because sometimes it's easy for us to identify the big things that we're grateful for. So we're grateful for a family, we're grateful for good health, we're grateful for friends, and sometimes, yes, those are important, but pausing to look on the smaller things in your life, things that you're grateful for. Man, this was a really good meal. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for this series that the church has put it on. Or I'm grateful for the smile that I see on my mom's face or my friend's face. Or that pet that I just got to play with. I'm grateful for those small things. So I had an activity for you to do, to write something down, something small that you're grateful for. But we're not going to do that, but I want you to think about it, and I want you to go home and start a gratitude jar. So write something small that you're grateful for. And practice this. Every day or every other day, write 3 small things that you're grateful for that you experience throughout the day. Put it in the jar, because some days when you're not feeling so optimistic and hopeful or encouraged, you can pull that jar out and go back in and look at some of those things that small things that you found you were grateful for. And then acts of kindness. We know that that has a ripple effect. Being kind to others is good for your well-being. Did you know it's also contagious? Kindness is contagious, whether it's a large gesture or a small gesture. So every time you hold a door open for someone, or if something drops, you help them pick it up, or even telling someone their baby is cute, you're sending out feel-good chemicals out in the world so we can have that ripple effect of kindness. So plan something small, a small act of kindness. And Pastor Kelly actually started something similar a few weeks ago when he gave us those postcards to write, telling someone that we're thankful or grateful for them, or sending a kind word to someone and sending that out. So that's something that you could do on a regular basis to help your mental health and to help somebody else's mental health. So think of something small that you could do. Even if going home and sending a text, somebody you haven't talked to in a while, somebody you're concerned about across your mind, sending them a small text or a small favor, I'm sure will not only help you to feel better, but will also help them feel better. And be intentional about it. Don't just do it because Keona said, okay, I need to write a text to somebody. Be really intentional about it. So just a quick refresher. We have more control over mental health and well-being than we realize. By taking care of our body with exercise, sleep, stress management, a healthy diet, we actually take care of our brain. And we take care of our minds by being with others and learning to activate that common neural pathway. And we can change our mindset to be more positive by being optimistic, empathetic, grateful, and kind. What I want to leave with you, I want you to think about the palm trees. Palm trees are strong and healthy and beautiful. They stand tall and people admire them. But did you know that palm trees must withstand very adverse conditions, such as storms and hurricane? But they're flexible. They bend without breaking because they're resilient. Palm trees bend and rarely break during storms and even hurricane. They're very flexible and have a strong root system. Storms actually strengthen these trees. So when we think about resilience, we want to think about the sum of the experience. We've all have really difficult experiences that we've gone through, some of us more extreme than others, but a lot of us were able to bounce back. This is often due to those positive factors in our lives that help us deal with stress from negative events. So resilience comes from a sum of all our experiences. Just because you've had certain adverse experiences does not make you destined to have physical or mental health problems. So we want to remember that the positive outweighs the negative. If you forget everything I said today, remember to ask for help if you need it. And I did leave some handouts out here and some refrigerator magnets with the crisis and suicide hotline 988, which is amazing. Before we had a very long 1-800 number to call if you needed somebody to talk to and if you need help. Now they're treating it as an emergency. So you know how you call 911 for medical emergency and crises? You call 988 for mental health emergencies. Isn't that amazing? Easy number to remember. And then, so ask for help if you need it, and reach out to others if you are concerned about them. And be intentional about reaching out. These resources are also at the back on the table, and these are just some local resources and national resources. So we have the suicide hotline. Riverwood is a community mental health center in Niles. Woodlands is in Cass County and Berrien County. Pivotal is in St. Joe County. And Corwell Health, this is their mental health line that you could call if somebody needs inpatient psych. And then the SAMHSA hotline, and Michigan has a disaster distress line and some other resources there for you. Any questions for me? Wow, all right. Okay.
Give me an example of a spiritual factor as a cause for mental illness, and also why is it better to sleep in the dark?
Well, I'm not a doctor, but we had a presentation a few weeks ago, and they talk about melatonin in your body, and that when you sleep in the dark, it increases the processing of melatonin in your system. And Linda probably knows that better than I do and can explain, or Morena, but it has some connection with melatonin in your body for the dark. And what was your first question? Spiritual factors. Yeah. So God is our creator, and He knows our body better than we do. Having believing in God, I won't say something that you believe in because we're all Christian here, but having a God who you can look to as your creator, who can take you, does actually increase and improve your mental health. People research, and I know we throw research out there a lot, but research does actually show that people who believe in God tend to have better mental health because you have someone that you can go to when you're struggling and when you have problems. Lack of, yes. Yes. We have some more questions. You're welcome.
thank you for your presentation. I have a cousin that's in Atlanta, and she is dealing with depression, serious depression, and I don't know what to do. I've given her the 988 hotline number, and I tried to get her out. It's hard for me from here to try to encourage her while she's there. But do you have any other strategies that I can use to help her deal with that? She just won't budge, she's not eating, just the typical depression signs and symptoms.
Yeah. So SAMHSA did a survey, and the number one thing that people wish they had when they're struggling with a mental illness is social connectedness. But sometimes it's hard for them to reach out. And so I would probably start with having people reaching out to her to actually go to her, because sometimes it's hard for her to get up and go to someone.
Yeah, and we my cousins that are down there, they go to her house, knock on the door, she won't answer the door, just shuts us out entirely.
Yeah, that's hard. I would start with praying, and I know it sounds cliche, but it actually works. So praying and praying specific prayers. And you're asking God for help. You're doing your part, and there's nothing else that you can do. You've done everything that you can, and so you leave it in God's hand, and you pray specific prayers. Additionally, if there are any community mental health centers in her area, right now there's a lot of peer support in community mental health center. And peer supports are individuals who have lived experience of substance use and mental health, and they're in recovery, and a lot of them are able to reach people who we otherwise couldn't reach because they have that lived experience. So connect them, or if you know of a community mental health center that you could reach out to and ask them to try and connect with her. Yes.
Have you ever dealt with traumatic brain injury, like
So I also. Okay, I'm sorry, I cannot hear you. The last part of it.
Have you ever dealt with vets that have traumatic brain injuries?
I'm a social worker, so that's out of my scope of practice.
Okay.
But I also worked in a medical hospital, and I work closely with a psychiatrist who works with people with TBI. And we do know, of course, clearly it's a brain injury, so it's going to affect their behaviors, their thinking, their thought process.
Now, how about, there's some medications that can actually cause problems too, Prescription meds.
Cause what kind of problems?
Different, like depression or other, symptoms, that type of thing.
Yep, that is true. There's some medication that increases your depression. So we strongly encourage that you start, depending on the severity of your mental illness, you start with lifestyle changes and self-care. I'm not telling anyone here to stop your medication if you're on medication. Please talk to your doctor if you're on medication. But if you feel like you're struggling with depressive or anxious thoughts, start with maybe changing your lifestyle. And we talk about some of the things that you can do. Self-care, taking care of yourself, and be intentional about that. And if none of that, reaching out to people, praying, if none of that helps, then you want to talk to a mental health provider to see what help you can get.
My daughter struggles with depression and anxiety a lot, and one of the, you talked about how just basic hygiene kind of goes out the window, and she's had a lot of that struggle. She also struggles with anorexia, and I've insisted that she continue going to the dentist for her regular checkups, because while she's not able to really take care of herself in that way, I really want to make sure that we stay on top of things in her oral health. But she's struggled because the dentist, the hygienist that she's been seeing has been very pushy about, you have to brush your teeth, you have to brush your teeth. And she's tried to explain to them the struggles that she's had, but it's, you have to brush your teeth. So I talked to my hygienist and told her some of the struggles, and my daughter tried my hygienist, and she, it was much better, my hygienist came up with ideas instead of, oh, it's just this or that, and trying to throw medication or something at it. The hygienist said, well, let's try a softer toothbrush, because she's got a lot of sensory issues with it too. And so it helped. But how can we, as a parent, or my daughter as the person struggling with it, how can we educate professionals who are having a hard time understanding that it may not be what you think it is? It's not, I've learned from, I'm a health professional myself, but I've learned from dealing with my daughter that what I would normally use doesn't always work, and what works this time may not work next time. So how can we help educate other health professionals in those types of situations? Because when my daughter talked to her counselor said, if you ever find a dentist or hygienist that understands this, please let me know, because I have at least 3 people off the top of my head who have the same struggle.
Wouldn't it be nice if you didn't have to try to explain that, or carries a holistic mind-body spirit type of approach that we take in serving people in the medical field? Unfortunately, we don't. So I would encourage you to start with educating yourself. And even though people struggle with mental illness, it doesn't mean that they're clueless. They know what can help them. Sometimes they just need a little bit of help. Sometimes they're so deep in their struggle that they really don't, and they need somebody to come alongside and walk with them. But start with education. And once you are aware, then you can be her advocate and say, this, I've talked to her, this is what I know, and this is what I'd like to do. And sometimes you have to be a persistent advocate to get them to listen. Does that help? Okay.
Hi. You
Hi.
had some awesome information, and I had kind of a 2-part question. Have you done social services outside of the United States? Have you done social services, or what you do here? Have you done it outside of the country?
No, my background is actually in accounting before social work.
Okay. My next question is, and I don't know how far spread your care goes, but something I've recently experienced with my doctor is the Geno test, where they run a swab, and through this test, it can tell them, it runs into 3 categories: the ones that my body will not react to and could be harmful or suicidal, ones that just have no effect at all, and the ones that would be the most benefit. My question concerning that was, how widely spread to the average person who is struggling with this, and those that are tired of being lab rats, do you think this is awareness that this resource is out there?
Good question. So not a lot of people know about the Geno test. And the thing is, it's very expensive. And a lot of insurance will not cover it. It's great. And when we talk about how far we've come in mental health, because before your doctor would do trial and error when they're trying to find medications that will work for you. And so they'll try you on something for a while, and this doesn't work, they stop it. Of course, after giving it sufficient time, and they try something else. With this test, they can just determine what, like you said, the probability of this medication that's going to work for you. That's great, and that's progress in mental health, but it's very expensive. And so a lot of people don't even know about it, one, because we don't talk about it, and then because of the cost that's associated with it. People can't afford it, and a lot of the insurance companies won't pay for it.
Would you help me understand the difference between depression, manic depression, and bipolar disorder?
Wow. Can we talk about that after?
Okay.
It's going to take just
more
more than just being up here. Long and short of it, there's a manic so you ask about depression and manic depressive. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, and then bipolar disorder.
Okay, so the short answer of that is the manic episode that's in there. And then there's hypomanic and mania. So hypomanic, feeling really, really down, just really depressed, just not motivated to do anything, they're not engaging. And then the mania, where they are going days without sleeping, and they're super energized, and this grandiose kind of experience that they're having, and feeling like they're larger than life and they can do anything. That's the manic episode. But we could talk more about that afterwards. Any other questions? All right, you guys have been wonderful. Thank you very much.
We want to thank you. That was excellent, excellent. I don't think I said at the beginning, but we didn't charge for this. If you feel like it was worth coming and you'd like to put a donation in the donation box back there, that would be much appreciated so that we can have more of these types of things in the future. Another thing I failed to recognize too, there are two who did not do demonstrations, but they did a lot. How many of you enjoyed those cookies? Okay. Vicki Kudanen made most of the cookies, so it's not just the one who brought you the recipe, but if you try it, I'm sure you'll be able to do it too. And let's see, Vanessa Gust, is she still in the kitchen? Yes. Sometimes you have to be a minute person, and Vanessa was a minute person today. We had many more register than we had planned, and so Vanessa went home and made a whole bunch more of the oat burgers for us. If she hadn't done that, we might not have had enough. So thank you, Vanessa, for doing that. Okay, any other things that I needed to mention? Don't forget, we're going to try and do this once a month, and it'll be on a Tuesday night. So thank you for coming, and I hope you have a good evening, a happy evening, and that you get to bed and have a good rest. Okay? Remember, the melatonin, she brought out the melatonin. Most of that is produced before midnight. So if you wait until after midnight, you're not going to have much melatonin. So get to bed at a decent hour, okay? Thank you. Before you leave, let's have a prayer and thank God for what we learned, okay? Thank you, our dear Father, for the way you created us. You created our brains, and we know that you have a plan for them to heal. And I pray that you will bless us in the weeks to come. May we learn to rely and trust in you always. Thank you for those who presented tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.